One, I want to thank you for letting me join you today. This is the highlight of my day. I always enjoy when I get to hang out with some of the amazing teens in our Houston community. I saw a few folks showing up from Lamar Consolidated ISD or Terry ISD. I grew up close to there in Needville, Texas. So while it was a while back, I've been where many of you are now. And I think that I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, making this a priority, and really learning from what I think are some of the best professionals in the country doing this kind of work. So be excited, and I want us to have fun today. So I am going to share my own PowerPoint. Sometimes when I drive my PowerPoint, I get a little lost. So Kashayla is going to keep me on track there. But I want us to have fun. If you have a question as we're talking, I'm going to have some time when I ask you to, reply in the chat. But if you come up with something on your own, feel free to speak up or to say something in the chat. We want it to be as interactive as possible. So let me go ahead and share my screen now. Okay. Send. Are y'all seeing my screen?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
I just went, there we go. Okay, still seeing it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're gonna talk first about, today's topic is personal branding. So personal branding, we're going to get into the specific definition of it, but as you're going off to college, you have to think about how you show up in the world and how you interact with other people. So that's a little bit of what we're going to talk today, but before we get into personal branding, assuming, of course, there we go. Let's talk about it. What is a brand? So anybody want to take a guess on what that means? Anybody? Okay.
Hello.
Go ahead.
A brand is, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. A brand is something that it's like a symbol of what they are. Like McDonald's, they're known for the yellow M. So.
Yeah, absolutely. A brand is, let's see, a brand is the way a company connects emotionally with customers, becomes irreplaceable, and creates lifelong links and associations. A strong brand stands out. People fall in love with brands, trust them, or don't trust them, and believe in their superiority. How a brand is perceived affects its success, regardless of whether it is a startup, a nonprofit, or a product. On the call here, we have 3 organizations that represent different nonprofits. Each of those organizations that you're interacting with has their own unique brand. So, list in the chat, what are some brands that you know of? We had the McDonald's example. What other examples do we have?
Sharing in the chat, we have Nike, Jordan, Hyundai, Vans.
Yep, all great ones. Converse, Chick-fil-A.
Walmart.
Yep.
Apple, Whataburger, one of my favorite brands.
All those are great brands.
YMCA,
well, here are some of the most valuable brands. You see Google, you see Coca-Cola, you see Apple, Microsoft, and Facebook. So let's talk about the essence of a brand. Either in the chat or out loud, somebody tell me some of the characteristics of Disney. Disney's a massive brand. They have theme parks, they have movies, they have merchandise. What are some things when you think about Disney, some elements that come to mind?
Their Disney logo.
Their logo, absolutely. What is it about? Let's talk about that. Look at their logo. It's the one in purple, kind of in the middle of the screen. What?
Oh, Karen, your slides aren't advancing. The slides aren't advancing.
The slides are not advancing. So let me hang on. Thank you for letting me know. So let me fix something. Escape. Okay, let's do this. It's not a presentation in Zoom unless there is some technical difficulty. Just know that.
True, and it's a Monday.
Okay, we're just gonna see my other slides on the side. Can y'all see it now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's, who talked about the Disney logo and their font that they used. Talk to me about Disney. What does that font kind of remind you of? Does it seem harsh? Does it seem soft? Does it seem friendly? Is it adult or childlike?
It's a bit,
Go ahead.
sorry, it's a bit whimsical, I think. Like it's just kid friendly, family friendly. It's not off-putting. It doesn't feel unwelcoming. It's very welcoming, I think, the font.
Yeah, it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be, you know, welcoming of children, especially, right? All the stuff that Disney does under that brand. You know, you're not going to see a horror movie under Disney, right? You're going to see good family friendly content because that's a big part of who they are. On the other hand, when you look at the Apple from, you know, Apple brand, what do you think of when you think of Apple? Simple, somebody said in the chat.
Smart.
Smart, kind of ahead of the curve, right? Intricate, advanced, high technology. So Disney and Apple are both brands, but they're very different brands, right? And so my big question to you is, how do you know these things about each of the brands?
I'm just gonna vote pump. Are you fucking serious?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. So how do you know what is a characteristic of Disney's brand versus what's a characteristic of Apple's brand? How do you experience the brands within the world?
The way that they're portrayed in media, I think, is a really big one.
Yeah. And companies intentionally interact with you. So you've got experience watching Disney movies or going to Disney theme parks or buying Disney merchandise. With Apple, same thing. You see their ads, you see they become present around you at all times in your consumption of media. So, are there any brands that are missing from the previous slide that you think are important in your day-to-day life? You can type it in the chat or you can say it out loud.
Social media brands, I think, like social media apps like Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, stuff like that. We use that a lot.
Yeah. Anything else? Food brands? Absolutely. College branding. You're all prepared to go to a particular college, right? And you made your decision for the college you are attending in part because of your perception of the college from what they put out in their branding. Okay. So we're giving you this background because what you need to know about branding is that it's intentional. Companies spend lots of money on branding because it is important to them how they show up in the world. And while we're not going to go over these, you will get the slides after this session, but just know that each brand has some ideals, right? Things like meaning, what makes them authentic, what makes them differentiate in the market, how flexible are they, right? If you're looking at a company that's, you know, about fire safety, you're probably not going to have a lot of flexibility. What do they value? How sustainable are they? Okay. So just know branding is intentional. And again, you can go through with the customer experience as to what companies do that. But let's look at personal branding. So what is a personal brand? Do you yourself have a brand? What does that mean? If companies have brands and then you as individuals have brands, how do those two things compare and contrast?
You can go ahead.
No, you first.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think a personal brand is how you present yourself to others, how you want others to perceive you. So that's what I think a personal brand is.
Yeah.
I feel like a personal brand is also like reminds me of cows. How like ranches, they have their personal brand that they put on the cows.
Mm-hmm. So it's your own mark on things. Is what you're trying to say?
Yeah.
Very cool. Anybody else? It's unique, absolutely, and it's about you. So your personal brand is the way you show up in the world, both personal and professional. It includes your writing style, your social media, your network, and your interest. It's all about you. So why we're learning about personal brands is you have to know that people are going to look at how you show up, what you're interested in, how you present yourself, and make judgments about you. And you should own what that is to a certain extent. You know, when you look at studies, your generation is considered to be the most savvy when it comes to some of these branding insights. So you have to know, you know, it's okay to, as I like to say, geek out over things, right? I teach public speaking. I have taught public speaking for a really long time. It's one of my areas of interest. A big part of my brand is helping others develop their public speaking skills. And people know that about me, see me, come to me to get them to do that. There's going to be things in your life that you find out through your college experience that you will become an expert in. Everybody's an expert about something. So lean into those opportunities, figure out what are the things that get you excited, and make it a part of who you are and your personal brand. Your personal brand should be intentional and help you work towards your individual goals. I think someone at the beginning of the call, was it Patrice, said that, Patrice, are you still on?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
You're going to go to Prairie View A&M and study nursing, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what made you make that decision?
I guess all my life, I just loved helping others and seeing my work being, helping an individual one-on-one. That's something that I wanted to do.
So I would say a part of Patricia's personal brand is caring and helping others, right? Because it shows up in the decisions that you make and what you're trying to do. So everything from I'm really excited. You are a very strong person to be able to go into healthcare field. That's very exciting.
Thank you.
But just know, people are going to ask you, the most common question you're going to get for the next few years is, what's your major? And for some of you, that's going to stay the same. Some of you, it's going to change, but that's also a part of who your brand is and what you do. So every step that you make with your personal brand needs to be intentional. And we're going to talk about some of the specific elements in that. And additionally, you're going to hear from another group later on, specifically about LinkedIn and how that can help you. So anybody else want to kind of talk about in general what their personal brand already looks like? Let's go in the chat. For each person, type 1 to 3 things that you see as a part of your personal brand. I see athletic, caring, religious, creative, helping others, being innovative, activism, funny, energetic. Those are all great things. And they will show up in your life in different ways, whether it be through interest in how you interact with other people or in what you study and put out in the world. So let's talk about how it intersects with your network. When I say your network, what does that mean to you?
Your peers, or like the people around you?
Yeah, the people around you. The people you have connections with that can help you with your interest. So much of creating a personal brand is sticking out as an expert in something you're interested in. So that could be writing, that could be social media, that could also be horses, right? It just depends on what your interest is. And networking is important to find other people who are interested in what you are interested in. So you'll see that in other people who have similar majors at college. You'll see that within your professors where you look to mentor opportunities, but you also might see it in your family or your church group or different things like that. So go ahead and in the chat, list some different parts of your network. What are the different groups in your network? I'm going to put some on the board to start, but what are we missing? Yeah, CCC is definitely a big part of your network. And if you don't see one that you know that's different from this group, what within this group do you think are the most important parts of your network? And why? Friends, professors. Denzel, can you tell me a little bit about why you said family and friends?
The only reason I said family and friends is because like your family motivates you to like I feel like they're supposed to support you in whatever decision you make and whatever choice and goal you set your mind to. And I feel like your friends are always there just to depend on you and just like root for you in any path you go on. So that's why I said both family and friends. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great answer. And, also be thinking about one that I put up here was friends of friends, because when you're looking for jobs later down the road, or if you're working while you're in school, some of the best connections you can have are maybe not somebody that you know well, but somebody that you know through friends and family, because they can vouch for you. They can, speak on your behalf. They can help you with those connections. Ron, you had a good answer. You said teachers. Can you talk to the group a little bit about that?
I said teachers because, like, as I said, like the better connection you have with them through the year, like you have an easier opportunity to learn and also have a better relationship with teachers. If that makes any sense, not really.
Yeah,
but
yeah, it does. Okay, very good. So let's move on. Any questions about networks? When you create your LinkedIn profile, on LinkedIn and on Facebook, you actually, you guys know this, you create networks as a part of connections within your everyday life, where your people in everyday life become your virtual connections. But sometimes you'll meet somebody and just connect online with them through LinkedIn or Facebook. I think it's important to utilize those connections. If somebody posts a job that you're interested in, or an internship opportunity, or different things like that, make sure you're pursuing those opportunities. And if you don't have that direct connection to the person that you're seeing wants to fill a position, use your network. Think about your network. Do you know somebody who works at the same company that they work at? Do you know somebody who goes to the same church that they go to? Networks are one of the most important ways to get connected to opportunities and to establish who you are as an individual and why people should value what you bring to the table. Okay.
Karen, I don't know if you saw what Jared put in the chat, and it kind of goes along with what you just said. But
yeah, please.
He mentioned that he said that sometimes your network can just be random people you meet who can share your same interests.
Absolutely. I think that's a very important point. I have a group online that I belong to, and we're going to talk about some social media groups in just a minute, but I have a group of nonprofit communications professionals. I am a nonprofit communications professional. This is a group that on a daily basis, we're connecting with each other, talking through problems. Most of them I have never seen in person. I don't know them. I couldn't point them out to you on the street, but we have an interest together in a particular topic and we use each other as a support. So know that those things exist, and the more of those that you can join, that you are of, that are of common interest to what you have, the more likely you're going to be around to see what opportunities can come out of that. Because regularly people will post jobs, they'll post, things where people can volunteer for things. So that's a really good point, Jared. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about social media. What are the rules that you personally follow online? What are the rules that you set for yourself that you follow online? You have all grown up with social media in a way that previous generations have not. So I'm curious as to, how you handle it. Keep it clean. Don't be insulting. Be respectful. Think before I post. Be appropriate. Be modest. If my parents can't see it, don't post it. That's a great one. That's a great one, Pauline. If I won't say it in person, don't say it on the web. Don't always put your true self. Be respectful. So, how you show up on social media is a huge part of your personal brand. It's people are going to research you whenever you're given an opportunity. So any information that's accessible, you should regularly Google yourself. You should have a Google alert set up for your name. When your name is Taryn Baranowski, the only one that shows up is me. So all of you who are named like Ashley Brown or something like that, you've got a little bit of other stuff, but it really is a part of who you are as your brand. So you've got to take control over that, own it, and understand that it has the power to give you additional connections. So let's talk through some thoughts on social media. One, you will always be searched online. If you apply for a job, just assume that somebody's going to look you up in all your social media channels. They see it as doing their due diligence, but it's also going to show them, are you caring? Are you kind? Are you friendly? Are you open to conversations? Are you finding a fight every 5 seconds to get in online, right? But that doesn't mean you shouldn't advocate for the things you believe in. But again, owning your personal brand and how that shows up. Your digital footprint will be used by folks to make judgments about you, both personally and professionally. Use your social media presence for good. Are you raising your voice? Are you speaking out for those that you care about and the causes you care about in a way that enacts change? It can build your brand and set you apart from others in your field of interest. So also, take an active role in it. Also, practice care and self-restraint. The line between personal and professional is more blurred than at any other time in history. So how you say you have a group that you volunteer with that helps get people registered to vote. That's a phenomenal thing, and you're a volunteer there. But you may also, because it's of an interest to you, be recruited to get a paid position doing something similar. And that's only going to happen if you, one, show online the good things that you are doing, and two, own your brand and own the role you have in it. I think it's important that we talk through that intentionality piece. So what are some things that you do online related to your personal interest? Does anybody have groups or topics that they regularly engage online with? I mean, you could even consider this an opportunity where you're engaging with peers and leaders in a network fashion on something that you're interested in. Anybody else want to give an example? Does anybody have like a, has anybody already started working with their college on something online? Aaron, could you talk a little bit more about that, speaking up on political and racism?
Well, I always believe that if you want to make a change, then you have to be the change. So speaking up on things like that is something I believe in. So I always speak up when I can.
So do you feel like combating racism is a part of who you are and what your brand is as a personal brand?
Yes. Yes,
That's great. That's great. And I think that, you know, those are the kinds of topics that are scary to approach, right? It used to be that you didn't talk about politics or religion, and that was what was considered acceptable. The problem with that, as I'm sure all of you know better than people who are older than you, is when you don't talk about it, it makes things worse. So please understand that I'm being very clear. You should talk about the issues that you care about and that you are passionate about. And like Aaron, with combating racism, those are important conversations to have, and you should have a voice in those conversations. I think the important part is making sure your voice is heard as your authentic self, and you're doing it in a way to work towards changing what you're caring about. Does that make sense to everybody? And just know that people are going to see how you put yourself out there, and you got to own that part of it. That's a great example. Really appreciate you sharing, Aaron. Any questions about this part? Okay. So what are the platforms for professional development? There are so many social media options out there, right? There's all the things, as we say. I would point you to 3 places where you really have to own your personal brand. That's LinkedIn. I'm not going to go into a lot of details about LinkedIn because you're going to do the extended session after this. That's Facebook groups. I realize that not everybody loves Facebook, and sometimes it's considered the old people thing to do, right? The problem or the challenge that I encourage you to overcome is if you are looking for jobs, internships, other opportunities, sometimes you got to go where the old people are, right? You've got to put yourself out there and connect to them where they are. So while Facebook has its own challenges, and I'm not, you know, fully endorsing it for many reasons, you need to be where there are people who are looking for folks for jobs, folks for internships, folks for volunteerism. So don't limit yourself and just be aware of that. But the group I was talking about earlier, the nonprofit communication group, that's a Facebook group. You see those also on LinkedIn, and you see them in other channels in other ways. So again, the people who are interested in nursing might have different online social media presences than those interested in communication, right? The communication folks are going to be communicating all over the place. But you want to build your network to be multi-generational, multicultural, and within what your areas of interest are. And then YouTube. I mean, YouTube is a place where you can make a name for yourself. I think YouTube is also a little bit tricky because it's seen more as fun in a lot of ways. Its brand is probably the least clear and least professional. But if you are an expert in something and you want to put content out there in video format, it really is the best place to go. So if you're really into photography, you can find a lot of videos about photography. You can find a lot of people to follow to learn things, but you can also put your own content out there. So you are a content creator of whatever area you are interested in. And you need to own what spaces those are. If you're very much into art and drawing, there are places online where you can find that information. So just think about that, do your research, and figure out what are going to be the best spaces for you. Questions on that part? Okay. So this is just a little 4 steps to putting together a personal brand. And again, you'll be able to have these slides, and this is not, the be all end all, but it's a good place to start. So you define who you are. You put out there what your bio is, you put out there what your interests are, and you put out what important information you want to share with the world. Building a personal website's also a good place if you want to put your resume online, or you have work, if you're writing, if you're an artist, if you are, creating content of some sort, having a place to point people to is always a good thing. And tell a story. A big part of what I do in my work is storytelling. So tell your story, tell who you are, tell how you got where you are now and where you're going, because that's the only way people are going to connect with you on a one-to-one level. And let me tell you, when it comes to networking, when it comes to your personal brand, all the stuff you're putting out there kind of en masse is to get to the point where you're having those one-on-one conversations and connections with people who either share your interest or are trying to help you to get somewhere to fulfill your professional and personal goals. So while you're putting a lot out there, it's all about getting towards those one-on-one conversations. And always be consistent. Make sure that what you're sharing on social media is supported by accurate data and research, and it continues to be your voice. I'm going to go back to, the Patrice example. If she's a nursing student and her personal brand is about caring and compassion, the way she shows up and the voice that she uses should have that caring and compassion as a part of it. It doesn't mean that she can't, feel strongly about issues, but it's a core of who she is. So if you're authentic about it, it will automatically show up. I'm just saying, pay a little bit more attention to it to make sure that it's intentional. And then our last slide is be yourself. It's an Oscar Wilde quote that I really love. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. This is about being your authentic self and sharing it with the most amount of people possible. But if it's not real, it's not going to be sustainable. So if you're passionate about art, if you're passionate about helping people, that's going to naturally occur, but you're going to have to want to be as authentic as possible in whatever you're doing. So with that, I've got a few more minutes. Are there specific questions that people want to ask just in general, whether it be about personal branding or communications? I'm happy to answer those.
So like with personal branding, I feel like, do you want to be like, I kind of put it there, don't exactly be your true self. Do we have to put out everything, only parts of ourselves? Kind of what you talked about, the caring branding is how she wouldn't exactly talk too much about political issues because she would want to put out there that she was caring and just loving for all types of things. So what should we avoid depending on what our brand is? Or like, do you kind of see where I'm getting there?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So you got to be authentic. I would say typically having 3 to 5 areas that you're regularly an expert on is probably, nobody's going to be an expert on anything. But what I will say is, in an effort to be authentic, never let your brand get in the way of sharing when you are passionate about particular issues.
Okay.
So I'm saying that you need to be able to share what you authentically feel, but just know that you need to write it or create it in a way that if other people see it, they'll be able to, they're going to make judgments on it. And you just have to be aware of that. And sometimes, you don't want to censor yourself for the sake of censoring yourself, but you want to censor yourself if in college somebody has a really crazy night and they go online and, share more than they should. That's where I think you run into more challenges. I'm just saying, be authentic, find the things you care about and share about those things as much as possible.
Okay, so like don't censor something that you feel passionate about, but you don't pick and choose what you censor because that's what represents you as a brand.
Yeah, it all represents you.
Okay.
Anything you put out online represents you, but you just have to be intentional about it.
Okay, thank you.
But that was a really great question. Okay, Jennifer says, I feel like this topic is a very common sense, but needs to be spoken more due to our lives having such connection to social media. I think that's absolutely correct, Jennifer. You know, you're going to be expected to show up in social media because that's just life. That's just what happens now. But you also need to take, because the way that it's evolved around the timeline when you guys are growing up and going off to college, I think sometimes it's a good reminder to let you know that you have to think about how it shows up because it's completely accessible all over the place. Okay. What is the best way to clean a mess if someone is bashing your brand, libel and stuff like that? Okay. So it really depends on what is being said. For the most part, unless somebody's famous, it can be hard to prove traditional libel, but I think the most important thing is to state your case, make your statement, and then as much as possible, refuse the tornado of repeated back and forth, because it's very easy to get lost in a Facebook or other social media platform argument. And you have to make sure you're stating the facts clearly, you're representing your case, and then you're walking away. Because the more it continues to go, typically the worse things happen. Yep. Great. Any tips or advice on how to start a conversation when networking with someone you don't know so well? That's also a really great question, Nadia. So finding through LinkedIn or other formats, if you have anybody in common, say for instance, you were trying to start a conversation with me and you saw that Ms. Kashayla and I were connected to each other on Facebook, then you could reach out to her and say, hey, I see that you know Ms. Taryn. Would you mind setting up a connection with me? If you don't have that, but you have something that you're very interested, maybe you read an article that they did, maybe you saw something that they shared that you really liked, make it personal. Reach out and say, you know, again, using myself as an example, I really liked that article you put on Medium about, you know, raising dollars for communities in Israel. Could you talk to me more about it? I'm trying to develop, you know, a particular skill set. So anything you can find that's common ground is the best way to do that. And it should, that's a very good point. The first conversation shouldn't be about what you need. It should be about something that you're connecting with them over. But when you start to look at it, those networks help out a whole lot. They're a key point that you need to be aware of as you're making the decisions about what passions you're pursuing. Okay. Anything else? Okay, you've been a really great, active, wonderful group. Again, I think everyone's going to get a lot out of this week, and I'm really glad to have been a part of it with each of you.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you. I see a couple of reactions. If you will